At 7:42 a.m., my phone logged a single bark at 42 decibels, about the volume of a quiet library. Karen called it excessive. That timestamp mattered, because what happened next changed everything. Instead of arguing, I trained my dog to whisper. Bark, a soft, breathy woof that barely nudged my decibel app, and only when she power-walked past my fence, not at squirrels. Just during her twice-daily lap around the cul-de-sac, we live on the kind of street where lawnmowers hum louder than birds and sprinkler heads tick in polite rhythm. Peaceful, predictable, sunlight on trimmed hedges. Her complaints were loud. My evidence was quiet. I had receipts, timestamps down to the second, HOA clause numbers highlighted. Even a $190 trainer invoice by the end of it. The HOA president was rereading the bylaws out loud in a folding chair under the clubhouse lights. And Karen wasn't smiling. But to understand how a 42 decibel bark turned into a board hearing, you need to see the first email, the one you never want to get. The email didn't come out of nowhere. It came to a house I chose carefully. I'm a remote IT consultant, which means I live by logs, timestamps, and version history. 3 years ago, I bought a modest ranch in a tidy HOA neighborhood. Trim hedges, mailbox height rules, and quiet enjoyment quoted like scripture in the bylaws. It's the kind of place where sunlight hits identical fences at the same angle every afternoon, and sprinklers click on in polite succession. My dog, Milo, is a 28-pound mini shepherd mix with an AKC Canine Good Citizen certificate, and better recall than most toddlers. I trained him with a local pro who charges $95 an hour. He barks at squirrels in the occasional delivery van, usually 10 to 15 seconds, then he's done. No marathon howling, no dawn serenades. I keep a Wise cam pointed strictly at my yard because privacy matters. A parcel ID saved in my notes app. HOA bylaws bookmarked. I follow rules. I just don't surrender reason. So when Karen introduced herself, with a tight smile and said, "Your dog barks a lot," I listened. I offered to keep an eye on it. I just didn't expect her first move to be a formal notice. The violation notice landed at 9:18 p.m. Subject line in bold, excessive dog barking. Karen had emailed the HOA board and CC'd me, claiming daily disturbances before 8 a.m. She even cited section 4.3.2 on nuisances, like she'd been waiting to use it. Reading it, you'd think Milo was hosting dawn concerts. The problem was simple. I had logs. I pulled the past 7 days from my camera app. Total bark time averaged 87 seconds per day. And before 7:30 a.m., not one clip showed anything close to prolonged barking. Her sweeping claim sat on one side of the screen. My minute-by-minute timestamps sat on the other. I walked over to clarify, hoping it was a misunderstanding. She opened the door halfway, said I'd reviewed the footage, and asked if there were specific times she could share. "You still have plenty of yard," she said. "Train him better." Then she closed the door mid-sentence. Entitlement met documentation. I wasn't angry. I was curious. Because when I filtered the timestamps by time of day, the logs showed something else. Milo barked most during 2, in 5:10 to 5:20 p.m., exactly when Karen Power walked past my fence. What if this wasn't about volume at all, but timing? I responded the same way I handle client disputes, calmly with attachments. I sent 7 days of clips, neatly labeled by date and duration. I included a decibel screenshot taken at the fence line, peak reading 48 decibels. For context, I linked the county's daytime noise guidance, noting typical residential ambient levels between 50 and 60 decibels, lawn crews, passing sedans. Even wind through trees regularly hit higher. I wrote that I was happy to adjust Milo's outdoor time if there were specific problem windows. I asked her to text me when it felt disruptive so I could correlate the moment with my logs. Peaceful neighborhood, simple coordination. Her reply was 3 sentences. It's constant. Fix it. No timestamps. No examples. I suggested we loop in the HOA for mediation so we could agree on measurable thresholds. She declined. That was the moment I realized this wasn't really about a bark. It was about control, about whether annoyed automatically meant violation. Still, I documented everything and emailed the board asking for clarification on enforcement standards. The president wrote back the next morning to provide objective evidence. I already had that. What I needed next was a strategy. First, I ran through the obvious fixes first. Could I just keep Milo indoors? Technically, yes, but he has a fenced yard for a reason, and quiet enjoyment applies to me too. A dog existing in his own space isn't a violation. Could I slap on a bark collar? No, I don't use aversives. Most collars can't distinguish between a squirrel sprinting across the fence and a neighbor strolling by. They suppress sound, not context. Could I ignore her? Not with an HOA that can fine $50 a day. After notice? That adds up fast. And once a precedent is set, once I'm annoyed, equals you're in violation. If anyone can weaponize it. So I checked the local ordinance. There's no requirement for a decibel meter in private complaints. But boards typically look for pattern evidence, not vibes. I measured ambient sound at 3 points. 44 decibels on my porch, 48 at the fence line, and 52 on the sidewalk when a pickup rolled past. Context matters. The constraint was clear. Stay inside the rules, reduce duration, and make compliance measurable. That's when my trainer said something that shifted the whole equation, you know. She said, you can put barking on cue and off cue. If this was going to be a process, I was going to treat it like one. I built a physical binder and mirrored everything in a shared drive. Tab 1. HOA Bylaws Section 4.3, 2 highlighted. Tab 2. The County Noise FAQ with the daytime ambient. Range circled. Tab 3. My parcel map showing fence setback and property line. Tab 4. Milo's AKC, Canine Good Citizen Certificate and Training Receipts. Tab 5. 7 days of time-stamped clips. Total bark time across that week. 10 minutes, 22 seconds. Then, I added a spreadsheet. Column a date. Column B, bark event time. Column C, Karen walking past on the sidewalk cam. The overlap was 82%, almost entirely within those 2 narrow windows. Pattern evidence, not opinion. I included an audio app screenshot showing peak readings under 50 decibels at the property line. For context, I logged the neighbor's lawn service at 71 decibels during a routine mow. No one filed a complaint about that.com. Evidence versus loud denial. I emailed the board chair, happy to meet and demonstrate if helpful. His reply came an hour later. Please present at Thursday's hearing. That's the line you never want to get if you're bluffing. I wasn't bluffing. And by then, I had a plan that would make the contrast undeniable. The trainer charged $190 for 2 focus sessions, and we treated it like a technical project. First, we shaped what she called a whisper bark, really a soft, breathy huff. On my meter, it hovered between 38 and 42 decibels at 6 feet, quieter than normal conversation. Reward the tiny sound. Ignore. The full bark. Gradually attach a cue. Within a week, Milo could produce a polite little huff on command. Then we layered stimulus control. The sound would only happen after a subtle hand signal. No cue, no bark. We practiced during Karen's predictable walk windows, 7:40 to 7:50 a.m. and 5:10 to 5:20 p.m. Because consistency matters in training. Malicious compliance. Maybe. But ethical. I wasn't amplifying anything, not directing speakers at her yard, not provoking. She walks on a public sidewalk. 8. My dog exists in his fenced yard. That's the entire footprint. At the same time, I drilled a rock-solid quiet, and he's spontaneous. Bark got capped at 3 seconds, then silence, then reward. If the allegation was excessive, I would demonstrate minimal, measured, and controlled. I emailed the board that I would present live decibel readings from my fence line under normal conditions. No special equipment, just standard training. And a phone meter for illustration. The goal wasn't to annoy her. It was to make compliance so obvious that the complaint collapsed under its own weight. Thursday at 6:30 p.m. couldn't come fast enough. All week, we drilled like it was exam. Prep. Hand signal. Soft huff. Treat. Randomize the intervals. Unexpected distraction. Quiet. By Wednesday, Milo could watch a jogger pass the fence without a sound unless I cued him. The yard felt calmer, not tenser, structured, intentional. Thursday morning at 7:44 a.m. Right on schedule, Karen came power walking down the sidewalk in neon sneakers. I felt that small spike of anticipation you get before a presentation. I gave the tiniest hand signal at my side. Milo offered one airy huff. I glanced at the meter. 41 dB. Quiet, I said. Silence. Total duration. 1.8 seconds. Karen stopped. Mid-stride, she stared at Milo, then at me, then slowly pulled out her phone as if documenting a crime scene. Calm evidence versus public claim. That evening at 6:30 p.m., we sat in metal folding chairs at the clubhouse. No theatrics, just a long table and 3 board members with copies of the bylaws. I presented the binder. 2 10-second clips. A brief explanation of stimulus control. Cue equals behavior, no cue equals none. The board agreed to step outside. To the fence line. Baseline ambient. 47 decibels. I gave the signal. Milo. 40 decibels. Quiet. Back to ambient. The president turned to Karen. Do you have logs? Dates? Times? Every day, she said. He looked at me. Duration. I opened the spreadsheet. Post-training spontaneous barking averaged under 20 seconds per day. The air shifted. That's when she said it. He only does it when I walk by. Exactly. On cue. Under control. Within ambient range, the issue was no longer annoyance. It was compliance. And compliance was measurable. What happened next decided everything. The vote was quick. 3 hands. 3 yeses. 3-0. No violation. No fine. The president cleared his throat and added something that mattered more than the vote itself. Going forward, complaints would require objective timestamps and documented frequency, not impressions. Not every day. Evidence. A week later, the HOA newsletter included a clarification in plain text. Occasional brief barking, consistent with neighborhood ambient levels, does not constitute a nuisance. It was subtle, but it was there. Public claim versus private proof, resolved in writing. Karen's follow-up email arrived 2 days after the hearing. 4 sentences, no citations this time. No, section 4.3.2. Just a tight acknowledgement of the board's decision. Neighbors who had stayed neutral started stopping me on evening walks. We heard about the demo, one said, half smiling. Another joked that Milo had better meeting etiquette than most adults. But the real payoff wasn't the whisper bark. It was the paper trail. Formal board finding recorded in minutes, tied to measurable standards. She escalated. I had precedent on file, and something else shifted. After that week of structured training, Milo barely needed the cue. He watched joggers, squirrels, even Karen. With calm curiosity, he'd learned that quiet earns rewards, so had I still. Winning a vote isn't the same as living next door. Over the next month, the complaints stopped. I kept logging anyway. 30. Full days of clips and decibel snapshots, belt and suspenders. If anyone questioned a pattern, I wanted a clean record showing consistency after the hearing. Average spontaneous bark time stayed low. No spikes. No surprises. Then I scaled back. Karen still power walks past my house at 7:45 most mornings. Earbuds. And now, eyes forward. Exchange neutral nods the way adults do when they've both decided not to escalate. No gloating, no pointed training sessions at the fence. No yard signs about decibels, just boundaries. The contrast softened. Like sunlight over hedges again, instead of spotlights on grievances. Kids biking at dusk. Sprinklers clicking on schedule. The street returned to what it had been before one word, excessive. Turned into a formal accusation. If she ever raises it again, I have the binder and the board's written determination. But the goal was never to win a vote. It was to live peacefully without, surrendering to vague complaints. And there's a practical lesson here about how HOAs actually work. Here's the part most people skip, and it matters. In most HOAs, nuisance is about reasonableness, not zero sound. Your CC&Rs or bylaws should define the term and outline enforcement steps. It's written notice, an opportunity to cure, and the right to a hearing before fines begin. Read that section closely. If you're accused, ask for the specific clause and documented instances, dates and times, not general statements. Provide objective evidence in return, logs, short clips, and context at the property line. Our mention measure ambient levels too. Context protects you. Many associations require pattern proof before fines, which often range from $25 to $100 per day after notice. Paper trails matter. Stay courteous. Keep everything in writing. Request a hearing if needed, and check local quiet hours. So your routine aligns with ordinance. Calm evidence beats heated emails every time. Which brings me to the part people still debate. So here's the honest question. Was training a whisper bark petty or proportionate? I didn't amplify anything. I didn't aim speakers at her yard or try to provoke a reaction. I measured the sound, reduced the duration, and demonstrated control within the rules we all agreed to when we bought here. Independence versus control. That was the real tension. Maybe the most satisfying part is that the solution was almost boring. No shouting matches, no viral meltdown. Just documentation, training, and a 3-0 vote grounded in bylaws. But I know some people will say, I could have just kept him inside and avoided the whole thing. Maybe others will say, I should have pushed back harder, so I'm curious. Rate it 1 to 10. Clever compliance or unnecessary theatrics? What would you have done first? Adjust routines, request mediation, or go straight to a hearing? If you've dealt with an HOA complaint, what receipt saved you? 'Cause calm. Documented wins aren't loud, but they last.